to go.
Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Arielle Moyal. Hopefully, I said it right, you guys. I'm trying to shake my Chicago accent just a little to give this phenom her proper pronunciation of her name. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Arielle
Everyone
is,
does it. Don't worry about it.
see, I like tried so hard and then you just go back to what you had thought in the first place. Arielle is CEO of Moyal Enterprises and a sports professional for the last 17 years. And you are just coming off the ESPYs this last week. So before you tell us more about who you are and what you do, how was that experience?
I mean, exhausting. I'm 35 now, and these event weeks get me more and more. Like the older I get, I just can't. I'm pretty sure a couple of my toes are still not. They're numb from wearing heels 4 days in a row. But it was a combo ESPYS MLB All Star. So a couple of cool things. I mean, I hosted my first ever gifting and hospitality suite, which was awesome. I started a women in baseball brunch, which now New Era sponsors, and so we had that. I did a photo shoot for Snickers and some NFL players. I had some people on stage at the ESPYs. I had a brand launch with one of the companies we work with. It was all over the place. So it was a whirlwind 4 days, but it was so much fun. And I ended it with a bang at the uninterrupted party, which was a primo event. Watching Nas perform live, I felt like I was back in high school, just enjoying everything. So
Wow. Sounds like an absolutely incredible week, but really focused on your new company. And you're just doing some incredible, amazing things with the athletes and the brands that you work with. And I mean, to say you hit the ground running isn't even doing it justice. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
yeah, so my tagline really for myself is I'm an accomplished marketing professional who has and continues to be instrumental in the growth of athletes away from the field, court, ice, whatever that might be. And I empower them to take control of their opportunities as ambassadors for causes and brands that they're passionate about. And now I'm also a guider for teams, agencies, and sports brands who really need help on maximizing athlete verticals and whatever other groups are trying to accomplish. So ultimately, I'm a leader who has integrity, self-awareness, influence, empathy, and respect while focusing on building relationships both professionally and personally.
So you're a 17-year sports professional. This didn't happen
Yeah.
overnight. Tell us a little bit about the path that it took to get where you are today. And in researching about you, I understand that you also played competitive chess
I did.
among, really dominating on the soccer field. So
Mhm.
there's a big story to tell here. Let us know how you got to where you are today.
That's my favorite fun fact. When everyone tells you to say a random fact about yourself, I always mention the chess thing. I definitely played just as competitively as I did sports, and I did a lot of sports. So, I mean, ultimately, I got here by driving myself to continually grow in progressively challenging environments in a male dominated world. And I learned that I belong by outperforming expectations and not conforming to the accepted ideas of what a woman can accomplish in the field of sports. This definitely started when I played competitive chess. I think it was like my sister and I and this girl Elizabeth, and I think there was a girl named Katie, and the four of us were the only girls in the room usually at these tournaments. And so we competed at a young age, and I learned young that I was just as good, if not better, than the boys, and that I could hold my own in that space. When it came to soccer, it was my sport of choice and I was really good. And I would often practice with my boys' team equivalent because I was an incredible defensive player and was fearless against the boys. And but I also played volleyball. And in fact, I still do play beach volleyball. So I had my beach volleyball game yesterday on Sunday, played softball. But my mother was a single mother, and over time, it was extremely hard to get me to all sports. So she told me to pick one, and I narrowed it down to soccer. Um, my kind of entrance into sports is a very interesting story, but I'll keep it quick because I know we've got a lot to cover. Essentially, an extremely bad injury derailed me from playing soccer in college, and instead, I took my acceptance to UCLA, and I decided to work for the UCLA athletic department because I wanted to be close to sports. I needed to make some money, and I was like, this will be pretty easy. And then here we are, sitting here 17 years later. And it's kind of that thing where sometimes the universe blesses you in pain and you have to embrace it and not fight it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome, or is there
Yeah.
another one along your career journey you want to tell us about?
There's a lot of hurdles. I was pre-med at UCLA. I took the MCAT. I thought I was going to be a surgeon. Like that was probably the biggest moment in my life where I had to be honest with myself about asking, do I want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a, student loans to med school, or do I want to pursue something that's very obscure? It's not really easy to tell your parents like, hey, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to pursue sports. Like, what the hell does that mean? Right. But despite a lot of hurdles, I think my biggest hurdle has been fighting for my place in a male dominated sports business and proving not just that I belong, but that I'm one of the premier sports marketing professionals out there, period, despite gender. And sometimes you're lucky and have a mentor that's been through what you're going through, and sometimes you have to forge your own way. I mean, I didn't get my first female mentor until I was 29 years old, and I felt alone all the time. That's 11 years into my career. And there are people that might doubt you in the beginning, but they won't when they see the tremendous value that you bring to those beside you. And it's actually been really interesting to see people who have dismissed me before all of a sudden pining to be in my inner circle recently or do business with me. It's been exhausting having to ask for respect often in rooms before I can say my piece and what I need to talk about. But I've been in this business for 17 years, the start of August, and I guess I'm doing something right.
Well, okay. So there's so much in what you said, but I want to talk a little bit about what I heard. And the underlying sort of theme here is your confidence in what you do and the way that you talk about yourself is so confident to not even mess around with words. You know what you're good at and you know how to articulate that. Where did it come from? And how do you make sure that you stay on the message and don't let the doubt creep in?
Man, that's such a layered question. And there's a personal aspect to that, which I actually really didn't unpack till I was older. So just because I'm confident doesn't mean that I always had self-worth. I think there's a really big difference there. And I think actually a lot of what struggles people go through now are because self-worth is attained by other people giving you acknowledgement and whatnot, and it'll never last. You can't feed off others. It's great to get acknowledged or validated, but you have to have internal self-worth. I didn't have that for a very long time in my life. I come from a pretty traumatic background, and we're not going to really go there, but I do. A lot of lifelong trauma as a kid in particular. And so as the oldest who more or less was a good kid, I was oftentimes kind of left to take care of myself. So with that being said, I overachieved because it's actually a trauma response. When you're not getting someone to listen to you, oftentimes those types of people are good at sports. They're really good in school, because if you think you do well in those things, then you'll get acknowledgement. Now, there's also anxiety and a lot of negatives that come with that. So I'm not telling people that that's the best approach, because it left me with also a ton of anxiety and lack of self-worth, which I had to overcome. But I did a lot of growth. I've gone through therapy almost my entire life. I read books, I journal, I'm really honest with myself. And so that has all kind of led me to be in a better place in my 30s. But trust me, this confidence was not always here. And I think the other layer to it is there's a lot of people that have lip service. We always hear about you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? Like, I can prove that I can back up everything I say. So it's much easier for me to be able to walk into a room and not be as phased as someone critiquing me or not believing in me, because I have the proof, whether it's in the amount of money I've negotiated, whether it's the players I've worked with, whether it's the work I've done, whether it's things I've done for the first time that still exist and are instrumental to this day. I mean, like, I created the UCLA men's basketball Twitter and Instagram when nobody really knew what social media was, because I was of that age, and now they still use it and it's still the same handles. It's things like that where you're like, that little raising of the hand going, hey, I think we should start social media. It has become obviously such a big driver for business there. So I have all these proof mechanisms, and that really allows me to, if you are a doubter of myself, I have a list of receipts where I can show you exactly what I'm saying is also proven within what I've done in my life.
Well, thank you for sharing that level of vulnerability with us, because it doesn't come easy. And you've shown that you've first asked for the help and have the help in your corner to support, your growth and development and to stay at that high level where you are. But you also know your proof and can just talk about that and tell everybody the track record of success that you've had in your past. And that track record is what has led you to launch your own marketing agency,
Yeah.
Moyal Enterprises, in March of 2022. And you're already making an impact, which we heard in your just crazy intro from the ESPYs on all that you did just in that last week. So, okay, you're working with athletes, agencies, teams, and sports brands to help them to bridge strategy and execution for unique solutions. So, what was the catalyst for leaving the agency you were with before and going out on your own?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually don't call our company a sports marketing agency because what we strive and what we focus on is athlete vertical. So it's a very particular niche. I'm never going to do your signage for your arena. I don't really care about that. I've been an athlete myself and an athlete advocate my whole life. So we either assist athletes on their own for everything that they need under their playing contract, or we help teams, agencies, and sports brands with either entrance into or growth within athlete verticals. So it's a very particular niche, but it's something that I realized is not done well, and it's not specialized, and it's really, really needed, especially for brands when they're dealing with players. Um, in terms of my old agency, I just need to be clear here on the formatting of the question. So I left Rep One Sports because of exhaustion, being overworked and underpaid. And while I was continuously voicing concerns, nothing changed. So I quit on a Tuesday afternoon without a plan. And I make that very clear to people, because it's not like I just was like leveraging something for a business. That's not how this happened. So Tuesday at 7 o'clock at night, and I just had an I'm done moment, and I was done. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I took 2 months off. I went to my aunt's horse farm in Virginia, like got up every morning and had to feed the chickens and the barn cats and the horses, and hung out with my cousins, and sat at home and did some reading, and didn't really know what to do. But I really just knew I needed to take care of myself from really extreme burnout. And all while that was happening, I was getting hit up by all of Rep One's competitors over and over. I mean, I probably turned down 10 to 15 job offers. And it's because I saw that most of the schematics of what these agencies were offering were going to land me back in that same position of extreme work and low company accountability amongst agents, and just amongst the other people of those agencies. So I declined all of the roles, and I just said I was going to be a contractor and figure it out. And it was actually my first solo client, a woman who I adore to death, Lauren Sesselman, and she's probably annoyed that I talk about her in every podcast, but Lauren, it's going to keep happening. And she approached me asking for help, and it's not somebody that I had known before. And in the conversation that we had, she told me about all these horror stories of unbelievable bouts of being taken advantage of, people threatening her career when she tried to stand up for herself, and a myriad of other personal tales of being a female sports star, but with complete lack of respect. And the narrative just made me furious. I was so angry for her, and I was so angry I couldn't go back in time to help her on some really severe issues she had had. And I told her I would help her. And that is the moment that I couldn't go back. And I realized in that moment that I really held something precious. And it was the knowledge of the people at brands, and the amount that those brands pay male athletes, that female athletes will never or hardly ever get access to. Because my clients for 16 years were some of the biggest male stars in the country. So I know who to get in contact with at those brands. I also have a track record with all of them. Plus I know what they pay males. And to be clear, my company has male clients, but we could do better for females too. So more and more athletes started to call me, because I think I was one of the best negotiators in the business, but also for women in particular that didn't know where to go, they now had a place to go. And brands started to call me as well, asking for help. People that I'd work with going, well, now that you're open and free, like we really struggle in this athlete category. We don't know how to deal with agencies. We don't know how to deal with players. Like, how do you track this? Like, how do you design this program? Like, blah, blah, blah. So I really kind of to formalize a plan in February. I think it was like around, like, it was right before the Super Bowl. I was like kind of toying with it. And my bud Fernando and I were talking about it. And I muscled through what a vision for a better agency would be. One where we were collaborative, one where we were welcome to women as part of the business model, whether it's in terms of the actual structure or as clients. One where one of my biggest goals is to have athletes be who works for me, to have athletes be considered for employment. I've heard athletes so many times tell me that they try to transition out of sports and then they can't find a job because they're told they don't have any experience. It's ridiculous. Like, if anything, they know teamwork, dedication, and hard work better than somebody that might be sending you a resume with a marketing degree. And so we wanted to just make a better vision for what an agency could look like. And February fleshed that out, went to Super Bowl week, kind of talked about it more, and then I launched it on March 1st, and here we are. And I think the bottom line is, and I know this is a long answer, but here's the thing. When you realize that your ability to grow and thrive within someone else's structure has been stunted, and you realize that you have to build something for yourself where you can not only progress personally and professionally, but you can help others around you do the same, that's when you build something on your own. And you put yourself in a position to walk the walk and to be that leader you craved early in your career for others. And that's my biggest driver.
Mic drop right there. That story. Okay. Like, you had enough, walked out, didn't have a plan, and look at you a few months later. So
4.5, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is so much proof that when you bet on yourself, when you're ready, and when you realize the unique talents and gifts that you alone possess, that the magic can happen. And it's really an incredible story. And speaking of your talents, one of those is negotiating. So let's talk deals a little bit. And can you tell us about one of your most memorable athlete brand deals?
I love this one because it is proof that the worst that can happen when you reach out to a brand is somebody tells you no. That's really the worst that can happen. And I think a lot of people get scared about that no. So they don't try things. So, a little known fact, which most people don't know about me, is that I am actually instrumental in creating and designing the Essentia Water Brand Ambassador Program. And I did that with my client, Kelly Oubre Jr. in 2017. Kelly was just drinking their water, and Essentia had been around for about 10 years at that point, but it wasn't very well known. And he liked it because it was alkaline water. And I go, do you want me to reach out to them to see if they can just give you product for free? Because you're like spending a lot of money on this water, right? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I reach out and they're really not into it. And I kind of convinced them to try an ambassador program with Kelly. And it went so well that they actually opened it up to Rajan Aranda, who was also my client. Then they opened it up to everybody on BDA's roster list. Kelly, I got to give Kelly credit here. Kelly Oubre is also a brand's dream because he commits when he commits. And he slam dunk for how he handled that free water ambassador exchange. He basically showed them, you're going to want me and you're going to want to pay for me eventually. And that's exactly what happened. So at the same time that I'm helping them build this ambassador program with my whole roster of clients, I had Kelly Oubre be the first paid athlete ever by Essentia Water. He was on billboards all across the country, including Times Square, Sunset Boulevard. He was on all out of home stuff. He was in front of advertisements before you watched a movie. He was everywhere. I mean, I will never forget getting a screenshot or a picture from somebody going, is that Kelly on a billboard in Times Square? And just watching my work like up in Times Square was bananas to me. And Kelly killed it. That campaign was called Overachievers. It was one of my favorites to date. Essentia also had an excellent concept with that because they had a cowboy, they had a jazz musician, they had a band, they had all these overachievers, and Kelly was the biggest mainstream athlete. And I mean, I don't think any brand now wouldn't know what Essentia Water's a brand ambassador program is. And it was probably $1 billion get for them. And it was during a time where in-kind trade was not leveraged as largely. I don't think that's the strategy anymore. I think that lane is saturated, but Essentia hit it right at the right time. And now people know who Essentia Water is, when before I don't think people realized it had been around for over a decade prior.
Well, I mean, the logo just popped right into my head when you said the brand name. So hell yeah, that is incredible. I love it. And also
a little side note, Kelly's dad had gotten frustrated about something and had not even like 2 or 3 months before I did the paid day for Kelly made some comment that, and his dad's great. His name is also Kelly. He's Kelly Oubre Sr. And he said something in a meeting along the lines of, get my son on a billboard and I'll be happy. And then I got his son on billboards in 7 major cities. So,
including Times Square
and Sunset Boulevard.
So check.
Check.
Okay. So we heard a lot about the deal making with the Essentia Water example. So, what is your approach? So in that example, you went after it. You saw the brand already with the athlete, went and made the ask. But can you tell us, like, without giving away your secret sauce, like, what's your approach when you're calling up, essentially?
Yeah. My first approach is actually with the athlete. So my first question to any new player is, what are you motivated by? And that drives how I do business for you. So here's what I mean by that. If you are a big league player who has paid your dues and or is one of the best in your sport, your motivator might be paid deals only in the six figures, money only. Absolute mad respect. That also means I am not wasting your time with stuff that will not pay you the way you want, right? Like, you've got to trust that I'm doing my part of the job. Woo, so sorry. Of course, I had to sneeze in the middle of that. Because the player ultimately has to buy into the strategy and be willing to participate, or the campaign will fall flat. And I don't think enough agents or agencies ask their clients what they want. Like, I have players that don't have social platforms. Why am I going to waste my time forcing you to have digital if you are, one, not going to maintain it, two, don't like it, and three, you're bad at it? There will be other ways that we can do stuff for you. That's not where we're going to go here, right? So ask your client what they want and ask them what their goals are. So, and that, I mean, it seems like a simple concept, but I don't think it's done very often. For brands, it's kind of a little similar. I always ask them, of course I come with ideas, and I've done some strategy, I've done some research. So I sort of maybe know where your goals align. But my first question is, even when brands go, what do you have in mind? I say, let me follow that up with your question. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish in Q3? What is your goals for 2023? How are you approaching your next fiscal year? Like, how you know your brand better than me, right? So tell me, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Tell me, how do we mutually discover an approach together, one that supports your brand and what you are already trying to do within your marketing department? Because sports marketing is going to be just a layer of that. And then, does the client I have for you that I'm suggesting actually fit now? Maybe they don't. And maybe I can suggest a different client because I go, hey, actually, my approach is wrong because the player I was going to talk to you about, that's not important to them, right? But then also, just in general, it allows the brand to feel heard and understood. And I think that telling them what they're supposed to do just never works. It's got to be mutually compatible.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot, and this has come up lately as I've been speaking with women in the front office that are in sales. And when we came up, like in the early, 2000s, it was, oh, you'd be great at sales because you can talk to a wall. But really, it's about the listening piece and asking the right questions. And I don't know, it's just been coming up so much lately that it feels like this epiphany. And I also think it's a bit of a woman's superpower, oftentimes, with
Yep.
the listening and asking the right questions. And that's what's going to lead you to the deal.
Off topic, but there's a reason also. So other than when I worked for Bill Duffy, I was either the only woman or one of two at every job I've had. Now, what that also does when you're a woman in places where I've been is there are topics that are extremely vulnerable for players that they do not feel comfortable talking to their agents about, which is actually why it is a benefit to have a female like me on staff. There are so many secrets that I'm going to take to my grave, and those boys know it. And that's why they're comfortable talking to me about it. And still to this day, I'm helping people within their most vulnerable moments. I mean, I'll never forget the day that a player of mine called me because his father died suddenly, and he was on a 12-day road trip that was international. And he said, I need you to get my dad's body back to Los Angeles, and I don't trust anybody else but you. I never planned a funeral in my life. I had no idea how to do that. Like, that's such a crazy thing to ask of me, and I had to figure it out. So that listening thing and that nurturing aspect is beneficial more than just in the negotiation part. It's also beneficial for that trust element that you have to build with players.
It's so true. And I'm so happy that we got a chance to touch on that and highlight where you can add such tremendous benefit that you might not even be considering at the moment. And one of the newest areas that is, I don't know, hot topic, we're all figuring it out. Let's talk a little bit about NIL.
Yeah.
So what is the marketplace like? What type of deals are being sourced? For listeners who work for teams and venues, what's the best way to engage college athletes?
Yeah, collegiate NIL is a wild, wild west. I worked for UCLA athletics for actually 9 years total. 4 were in completing compliance and recruiting, and then 5 were for the men's basketball team. So I definitely get tapped into about this a lot. I've sat on quite a few panels. I created the NIL division at Rep 1 also. So I had to do through, all the legal back work. So I'm a bit of a pessimist in this category, I'm admitted. And that's just because I don't trust the NCAA. And I don't think that the design to be hands off was not done on purpose, but we'll leave that there. So why that matters. I think that whatever we're going to talk about today will change in a year. It'll change the year after, and this will not be a consistent topic of conversation. So the marketplace is going to be fluctuating consistently. And so are the strategies that people are going to have to take with these players. They're going to have to really be aware of the continuing ever-growing shift that we'll be taking in this this grouping. And you're seeing effects of this already, right? I'm a UCLA Bruin. I don't like that UCLA is leaving the Pac-12 to the Big Ten with USC, but I get why they're doing it financially, right? And that is going to be an effect too. You're going to have this hurt states. We're watching UCLA in a battle with UC Regents and Gavin Newsom right now. It's going to be so sticky in so many places, and money is going to be the driver. Money's always the driver in college athletics. Let's get that out of the way. It's not amateurism. The NCAA does not care if you're an amateur athlete. They just don't want to pay taxes. So there's always going to be a money element. The best thing to do is just through education as a brand, show those around you like where your brand stands. So, I think students especially really are in tune to things socially. They really try to match with brands that speak to who they are as people, especially Gen Z. I mean, look, millennials are shifted the way that we deal with capitalism, but Gen Z now will just ghost you and doesn't care. Like Gen Z, if you are not aligned with their morals and values, will say peace, deuces, I'm out. And that is collegiate athletes at this point in time. So that is something that's going to be a huge driver for brands. Like, make sure it's the right alignment. I think that another part might be having athletes build their personal brand. So, the influencer status of athletes continues to rise. The influencer status of younger people continues to rise. So as a brand, what are you giving them in return? Like, what value are you adding? It's less transactional, I think, than professional athletes. How are you helping them grow? And how are you helping them control their own narrative and make it, again, symbiotic and collaborative versus you're just going to do this post for me for a couple $1,000s, right? With the NIL being a new avenue, not all athletes have had the opportunities to focus on building themselves up. So there may be opportunities for a brand to help build that personal brand, and that can be really, really influential. There's plenty of cases where athletes' personality was showcased after signing with the brand. I mean, like Peyton Manning, though he's a professional athlete, didn't build his brand through his social accounts, but when he was given the opportunity to align himself with brands, his personality showed through, and that led him to more opportunities. So I think it's less of a transactional relationship, and brands really need to be aware of how they're interacting with students. And sometimes it's just about identifying the right person. Do I think that football and basketball players are the right people? I don't. That is a saturated market. Why do brands keep going after those people? You're going to get a lot more authentic from more obscure more obscure sports, and women in particular. And when you take away football and basketball, the majority of deals done are for women in collegiate NIL because they absolutely lean in 1,000 times better. Like Champion, I'm clearly a fan. Champion's campaign with Saweetie highlighting obscure sport athletes at obscure schools was excellent. It was one of my favorite ones I've ever seen done, and it also transformed those girls' lives. And that is also, by the way, going to create a lifelong fan for your brand with that person too. They are not getting paid millions of dollars. They're not usually motivated by money. And so at the end of the day, you're creating an authentic relationship. It's much better than something that's transactional because it's a lifelong relationship when it happens that way versus let's exchange money for an appearance at a car dealership. What do you do?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Whoa, such good and great information in what you just said there. And it's all about that alignment. How do brands find the athlete? Is there a go-between? Is there an in-between to help mediate that? Or are you like searching for the colleges, looking at the rosters? How is that working?
Shameless plug here. My company does that. So holler at your girl if you're a brand that needs some help. No, we definitely do. Like the Snickers campaign I referenced last week was actually the production company, and Snickers reached out and said, we need NFL players. We don't know who to go after. And I reached out to targets that I knew would be good for this particular campaign and then facilitated it for them. I mean, I know pretty much everyone in like sports, and so does my counterpart. So that we do that. But for brands, I do think that I think national versus local is going to be different. If you're a local brand, target obviously your local schools, whatever's close to you. And remember that in college in particular, some of these schools are the only thing in that area, like Beaverton, Oregon, like it's the thing. There's no professional team over there. Portland's too far away for you to probably have a ton of Blazers fans. So the Beaverton schools are going to be the ones that drive that, or Eugene, Oregon, or other small obscure schools. So Fresno State, right? The Cavendish twins went to Fresno State. Like they were tapped into that local market. So I think identifying your group and who you're trying to target, what are your goals, and then paying attention to the students that are shining. I mean, gymnastics players are usually the most dynamic. They're awesome. Like watch some of those meets. Some of those girls have swag. They know music. They can really, get a crowd going. Yeah, I think you just really need to be creative about like who you're looking after. I definitely think you need to educate yourself on who's playing sports. But I also think that there is a problem with brands being a little bit lazy and not wanting to do the work. So that's why they just go to football, baseball, basketball.
Yeah, incredible advice right there. And giving advice is a passion of yours because mentorship is one of the pillars of who you are. You mentioned at the top of the interview hosting a women in baseball event this in the last week. So I got to ask you, what is the most common question you get from young people who contact you? And then how do you answer that question?
It's always, how do I get started, or how do I become like you, or like where you're at? And the hardest part is trying to find your way in a new industry. And anybody that reaches out has already taken the hardest step. I think that people don't realize like that kind of step out is hard. People, like I mentioned earlier, people don't like the no's and the no, I don't have time, for the negative. And I'm going to say this over, the worst thing that can happen is someone says, I don't have time for an interview right now. I don't have time to answer your questions. Like, no, like that's the worst thing. And it's the people that are persistent that I've always remembered. And they've been in my lives forever. And when you start to build that network by reaching out, by doing the hardest part, which is asking people, how do you get started? That's how your foundation begins. And those people remember you, and that is your foundation. You're building your network by just asking that question, how do I get started? And I think that more opportunities will appear from that.
100%. The worst you can get is no. And I talk a lot about how to craft that outreach.
Mm-hmm.
If you send me a one sentence on LinkedIn that says, can I pick your brain? Enter. Like I'm probably, I'd have to have a really slow day to respond and say what time, like do a little bit of research before you're reaching out to people who you want to help. Show that you're investing in them so that they should be investing in you to help get you started.
There's a quote I now remember because an intern of mine reminded me I said this, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I said that wonderful gem of knowledge. And it was, apparently I had told him advice, and the advice was, while networking is professional, it doesn't mean it's impersonal. And what I meant by that was, when I have students that just reach out to me because they need something, I'm not going to help you. But if you are remembering that I told you, I've got a crazy ESPYs MLB All-Star Weekend, let's get in touch, start August. And at the end of the week, you reach out and go, hey, I hope that your week went really well. I'm really excited to talk to you in a couple of weeks. Such a world of difference. Because you remember something I said. Like I remembered, like I used to just log nuggets away that people would tell me, like, hey, I can't talk this week. I've got to go to my daughter's soccer tournament in Utah, blah, blah, blah. And I would touch it and be like, hey, how'd your daughter do? Like, did she score? Like, what did they wind up getting a medal? Like I would ask, I would invest in that personal aspect. So even though it's professional, it doesn't mean it has to be impersonal. And I think there's that is why I have so many contacts I can tap into, and I've been able to tap into for almost 2 decades.
Such a good gem of advice. What was the theme of the Women in Baseball event that you had in the
Oh
last
man.
week?
I came from the NBA before I started working baseball, and I already thought diversity there was bad. MLB, we got to do better. It's really, 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 really bad. Um, I remember going to my first winter meetings, and I don't think I saw more than 6 women total. And I'm pretty sure I was the only agency being led by a woman that week. And I went to 15 meetings, and only one, New Balance had a manager that was a woman that didn't really talk, had a woman in the room. She's no longer there. So think about that. Like, not a single other woman in any of the rooms except for me, except for when Anne was in that one meeting. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I started to also feel a little bit lonely. Like I didn't really have a lot of people to ask advice for. Baseball, working in baseball was a little bit new. So I started to kind of tap out to people, especially women that I knew. Like Franklin had somebody that worked for them that was a woman. So talking with them, a couple production people I knew, some people at the MLB. And so then last year at the Denver All-Star, I decided to put that group all in a chain email. And I said, if I plan a brunch, would you all show up? And a lot of people said yes. So I spent my time researching, and I called hotels, and I got a brunch space in the main hotel. And I think at that point it was like 18 people. We had a great time, and almost nobody else knew each other. There's like maybe a couple people that knew 1 or 2 people. I was the connecting point between everyone. And what it did was open so many channels of business for those women, so many people to tap into. And so this year I thought about doing something, but I felt weird having left, my old agency. And then the marketing people from New Era called me and said, are you going to do your brunch again? And I was like, I'm not sure. I'm feeling kind of a sort of way about it. And they basically said, well, what if we get our events team to put it on? So we take the lift off you and we'll pay for it. And I was like, sounds great. So New Era, shout out to Jesse and Marilyn. You did a kick-ass job. They were wonderful. And we put that together, and we had, I think, 45 people this year. And we had Perch in downtown LA all rented out for us. Everybody got a gift. Everybody networked. It was great. And I want to continue doing it moving forward. And I haven't told Jesse and Marilyn this, ladies, but somebody on football asked me to do for the Super Bowl. So I'm going to be emailing you soon. So they saw what I did for the MLB, and they asked me to do it for Super Bowl.
Amazing. I love it. And it's a very similar story in minor league baseball, and been a part of many women in baseball events at winter meetings, and ones that started as coffee or brunch because that was the only available space in the very packed agenda for these conferences. So shout out to you for getting that going at MLB, and now it's got legs to grow in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Okay, so what's the best part of your job?
I think being an advocate for people, especially for being an advocate for athletes and helping people, that's always why I wanted to be a doctor. It's because I wanted to help people. And that's part of that, internal conversation I had of like asking myself, not going to med school, am I going to be a failure? But I realized that I still got the chance to help people. And like I said, in some of their most important pieces of their lives in the business I have. And that's really what drives me, that advocacy.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I know you've helped so many, from athletes to getting their connections with brands to growing their personal brand. You're in the NIL space, you're helping women. And if you guys go to Arielle's website, like the list of clients is so long, my MacBook computer screen like couldn't even.
That's not even all of them too.
Yeah. I couldn't even view them all when I was doing the research for today's interview. So to say you hit the ground running and made an impact again is an understatement. And
appreciate that.
I know we'll be huge fans of yours, watching your success for a long time here. But there's another thing about you that you haven't told us about yet. And that is that both of your parents are chefs, lucky girl. And I heard that you do take after them just a little bit. So what do you love to cook? And have you ever integrated this love of cooking into your business?
Yeah, I was definitely the kid where everybody wanted to trade lunch items for me. And then I was also the kid at home that like didn't have like processed foods. So I was like, yeah, give me your Oreos. Cause like, I didn't realize how good I had it to have like homemade cookies. So yeah, I cook almost everything I eat from scratch. I like to say that I make a really mean chocolate chip cookie and an excellent roast chicken. It's kind of my opening line there. I think that creating part, like taking leftovers or something random and making it delicious, is kind of like, I see how that translates to what I do, like this like sort of taste for being creative and problem solving. But there are times, especially when I was on teams, that I would integrate this. So whenever I was on teams, I'd always make my players holiday cookies. And then I would also always bring in chocolate chip cookies because it was a favorite to the office. And at the agencies I was at, every time we had a new client signing and that I would be meeting, I'd always ask them what their favorite dessert was so that they had a treat. And I would always bring treats to I would always bring treats to draft days. I'll never forget this. I got into so much trouble. It was a pro day for BDA. And so my old general manager, Vlade Divac, was going to be there. And I knew that. So I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to be bringing treats. I'm like, what do you want me to bring? And he loves chocolate. So I made brownies. He's like, bring me brownies. So again, all the general managers are there supposed to watch the players like working out. And Vlade has stopped me at the end line. And I've got like Mitch Kupchak, Vlade, all these GMs like grabbing brownies from me, not paying attention to workouts. And Duffy was like, Arielle, enough with the desserts. I was like, he stopped me. Like, what do you want me to do? But yeah, apparently everybody knows about my treats at special events. So I got in trouble for that. And I was told like next year to like, please make sure I had a designated time to pass out goodies. So
Okay, this just humanized you like beyond measure because you are such an achiever. You introduced yourself before I hit record as a Aries type A. Is that what you said?
oh yeah, I'm an Aries. I'm a fire sign type A.
Yeah. Yeah. Yet you make cookies for people, and it's part of what makes you so good at what you do because you're asking the questions and getting to know people and what they like and leaving that impression, going the extra mile that somebody else isn't going to do.
Well,
So,
that's, I think it makes you stand out. Like I feel like I still have players tell me they miss my Christmas cookies at the holidays. I would make everybody individual sugar cookies. If you were not Catholic or Christian, I would like I had a couple Jewish players. I made sure that it was respectfully themed for you, and like I wasn't gonna shove that on you. So even those little things too. Like I remember one player remembering that I always made him blue 6-point stars. And so yeah, I mean I think it makes you stand out.
do you ever sleep?
I'm clearly tired right now. I do. My husband has to tell me that sometimes doing nothing is doing everything. So I do have to get reminded of that sometimes.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I would love to just record this forever because your leadership is so evident. I know the audience has learned so much from you today, but I want to go into the final four
Yeah.
questions. Start with a big topic and then three softballs to finish. So, what is your top piece of advice for women?
Yeah. 1,000% you need to search for a mentor who can help you navigate the world that you're in. I realize that sometimes tough. It's much easier now. When I was younger, there was not very many women doing what I was doing. And I mentioned I did not have a female mentor in sports until I met Nancy Lieberman when I was 29 years old. But I was feeling so many things going, is it me? Like, why don't people like me? Like, what's going on? And when you realize somebody that accolade, we're talking about a double Hall of Fame basketball player, Olympian, everything, is feeling the same things you are, it's not a you problem anymore. It's a systemic issue. So to have that person understand you and your world, it makes it so much easier to feel confident in pushing ahead and continuing to succeed.
Dynamite advice. All right. Where are you traveling to next?
Going to Virginia on Wednesday to my family reunion. I'm so excited. It's my favorite trip every single year. Can't wait to see my entire family. And it's at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains, so there is no TVs, is no internet, there is no cell phone service, and they ring a bell to tell you when to come get meals, and it is wonderful. So I cannot wait for that. So I will be leaving Wednesday to spend time with my family.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your pump up song?
I like laughed when I saw this one. Okay, so I'm gonna give you two. When I played soccer, I played the same song before every game because it just like made me like get all hype. And that was Andrew WK's rock song, She Is Beautiful. It's great. But it's got this beat that just like makes you want to just sit in your car and just like pump your fists and get like all excited. Now, I like to say that if I was a baseball player and I had a walk-up song, it would be Logic's song Icy, because it just reminds me that I'm a bad bitch and I would totally walk up to the plate with that. So
I love it. And This question, it's funny when I ask people this question, like they're either so dialed in with their answer, they know exactly what it is, or it's just like a genre of music.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really powerful. I love a walk-up song, obviously having worked in baseball for a million years. It's like to lock in that mindset.
Yeah.
So it's important. So take this note of advice from the conversation today. If you don't have your very own walk-up song or your very own pub-up song, find one, because it's unbelievable
Yeah.
what it can push you to do and give you the confidence you need to jump in.
That Logic song is such a good walk-up song that I've actually tried to convince players of mine to request that to be their walk-up song, but nobody ever bit.
Maybe they will. Maybe they
Maybe they
will
will.
after
Shed Long, I'm looking at you. You got very close.
this. All right. What is your favorite quote?
This is so interesting because I did a seeding package when I first started my company for the people in my life that had been there for me and saying I appreciated them on this new jersey. And in that package, I talked about what my quote was on my email for over a decade and the one it changed to. So I'm going to give you both, but I'm going to end it with the one it changed to. The quote that I drive my business with, that you'll see in my branding, is good energy is contagious. You never know who needs you. And I think it's a reminder that all of us are interconnected and we need to remember that. Now, with my new business, the quote and the mantra in my personal life has changed to, if your path is paved, you're living somebody else's dream. And I've talked about finding a mentor that's navigated this world that you're in, but that mentor should help you find your own path, right? Naturally, they'll help you understand how to find your way in the world you share, but they should also be big proponents in helping you pave your own path. And we all have different goals and aspirations in life, but both personally and professionally. So we all need to figure out what's best for us and how we want to get there and where we want to go.
It is so beautiful and shows the journey that you've been on, and is inspiring through this conversation to lead your own way. Trust your intuition, trust your
Yeah.
skills on what is right for you, and not following in the footsteps of someone you think is doing it right. You've got to trust your own skills and your own intuition.
I ask when people are confused about how to approach sports, I have a game I play with my interns. And the first question is, what are you good at? And the second question is, what do you like to do? A lot of people start way behind the pack because they've already limited themselves really badly. I want to be the VP of communications for the Angels. Good luck. There's one of those jobs. And if you expand it to 30 MLB teams, there's 30 of those jobs. Do the math on the probability of you getting there. It's not that it's not possible. It's just very, very difficult. So I think that, and I know this wasn't asked of me, but I think I would end this with saying that if you have not actually asked yourself what you want to do and like what you're good at doing, and when you're applying for jobs, if the job you're applying for does not have that thing, both of them there, that is your number one non-negotiable. Why are you taking that job? Don't do it. You'll be unhappy. And you got to figure out what the other things are that motivate you, or what your non-negotiables are, like too much time in traffic, spending time with my family, compensation, whatever that is. But number one's always non-negotiable. And that is, what do you like to do and what are you good at? And I promise you, it's going to open up a lot of other options for employment for you, because you'll see that there are other brands or places that have that you didn't ever consider, because you're so hyper focused on what I think is actually outward clout for other people and not yourself, to be in a team, to do those kinds of things. There's a lot of ways to work in sports that have nothing to do with teams. And we have to also remember that. And I would beg to say that some of those people are probably a lot happier.
I think like we've started to call it logo polo syndrome. Like
Yeah.
you're so focused on that left chest logo on your polo that you're not expanding your mindset into like, what would
Mhm.
make you really happy? What is it that you really enjoy doing, to your
Mhm.
point? And
Yeah.
I think ego has a bit to play on that. And what are you going to post on LinkedIn? What flag are you underneath? But it doesn't matter what the other people think. It matters about the life that you're living, and if you're happy with where you're at.
You got one life, people. Why are you going to do it for other people? You should never do it for other people.
100%. Well, we're going to end on that,
Okay.
Arielle. And Man, this was such an inspiring and amazing conversation. And we're so grateful to you for joining the Leadership is Female podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.